Today I'm smoking a brisket. I've got this beautiful choice grade 14-pound brisket. I'm gonna show you a basic, easy way that anyone starting out can smoke a delicious brisket. Super easy, super simple. This is great for beginners. The first step of this long process is trimming, so let's get right to it. Here's our brisket. You can see it's kind of a mess right now. It's got a lot of fat on it. So when I'm looking for a brisket, you want to find one that's thick on the flat end. A lot of times it'll be super thin over here. You can kind of see how thin it is here. I'm going to trim a lot of this off anyway, and it gets thick pretty fast. So that's what I look for. Also, you want to look for some of this intermuscular marbling. If you don't see any fat in this meat, it's not going to be the worst brisket. Probably just not going to be as juicy as one that's got more fat in it. I usually like to start on this bottom meat side, and I like to start with this big chunk of fat here. So you're going to want to get yourself a nice sharp boning knife for this process. I just have a Victorinox here, semi-stiff boning knife. You can look them up online. They're very cheap, but it's a nice quality knife. There we go. Now you can see how big this chunk of fat is here, but don't throw this away. I save all my brisket trimmings. This will make some fantastic tallow. You can also use it if you're making sausages. Now we got that chunk out. You still see there's a little bit of fat in here. Work out a little bit more of this. You just don't want these big pockets of fat when you cook a brisket. It's just not too pleasant in the end result. I mean, I love myself some fat, but you want a good mix of the meat and fat. If you pick yourself out the right brisket, it should have enough fat inside of it, especially in the point end. It's got plenty of fat. Go ahead and just trim out the best you can here. So this pocket of fat here is the one that goes in between the flat and the point. You don't want to go too far, otherwise you're just going to start splitting these two apart. Get this flipped over to the fat side, start working on that. First thing I like to do on this side of the brisket is get rid of this flap here. Let's go right in, trim that off. Big chunk of fat in here we're going to want to get rid of. I like to just come straight down, cut that out. So this is what we want to avoid. You want to try and keep the fat on there. I'm going to trim this off anyway later, so that's not too big of a deal. Try and get a little more of this fat out of here. This already has a good amount of fat on here, so we're not going to have to do much trimming to it. Maybe a little over here, but we're trimming these edges off anyway. But over here, we have a lot of fat. We're going to want to try and trim some of this off. Just take your time, go slow. You don't want to cut too deep into the meat here. So I don't know if you can see here, we're getting pretty close to the meat on this end, so we're pretty good here. If you feel the brisket, you can kind of tell how much fat is on there. If you're new to it, it's just going to take some time to get used to it. You can see here, whoever butchered this cut through the fat into the meat. Not a big problem, it'll be fine. I like to just kind of shape this brisket a little bit. Like this thin bit over here, this is all going to have to come off, something like that. And save this. This will make some awesome burgers. I just want to kind of round it out a little bit. I don't mind cutting big chunks off like this because I like to make ground meat, sausages with it, all sorts of good stuff. This whole edge is going to have to be trimmed off. This is mostly fat anyway. Let's go ahead and just cut a strip off, see how it looks. Not too bad. Now you can really see how much fat we got there, and that's looking pretty good. We might be able to trim a little bit more of this off, but kind of like that as it is. Move to this side. This is another chunk of fat right here. Usually come down and just try and trim this fat right off. Something like that. See how much fat's going on in here. We're going to want to get rid of that. All right, so I think that's pretty good there. Got a lot of that fat out. You can see there's still a ton in between here. But now we got this mohawk back. It is good meat, but we're going to have to trim this off a little bit. Let's flip this over. Now all this we're probably going to want to trim off. Mostly fat. Clean this up a little bit. So every brisket's going to be different. This one's a longer brisket here. Got some good marbling, but I'm happy with this trim like that. Got some good fat on there. Another thing I like to do is just kind of flatten it out a little bit. It's about as good as we're going to get here. All right, this brisket is ready for seasoning. So if you couldn't guess, I'm going on with some salt first. This is a large piece of meat. You're going to want plenty of salt. Make sure you get all the edges. This is just plain kosher salt. Now we're going Texas style, salt and pepper. And here I have some butcher style pepper. Great on brisket. It adds a phenomenal bark because of how coarse it is. I also like it because you don't need as much. It's got a strong flavor. If you can't get your hands on this, table grind pepper will be fine. Now the other side, we go on with our salt. Now you can use whatever you want. You can go ahead and just go on with a barbecue rub. But I find going super simple with just salt and pepper allows the smoke to really get into the meat. So that's why I love going super simple. All right, there we go. Check it out. Ready for the smoker. And I'm going to be running at around 275. So let's get out there and get this on. All right, smoker's up to temp. Let's get this brisket on. All right. So the heat on my smoker is coming from this direction. That's why I have the point side here. I'll probably end up flipping this later and rotating it around, but for now, this is good. So let's close this up. Let this thing cook. I'm going to be anywhere between 275 and 300. But what temperature you run your smoker at really depends on what kind of smoker it is. If you have a smaller smoker that doesn't have much airflow, you're probably going to want to run it around 225 degrees or so. Since I have a bigger smoker and I have a lot of airflow going through there, I'm not afraid to run this at 275, 300 degrees. I like to keep the temps a little lower in the beginning because then it lets more smoke flavor get onto the meat. But that brisket's going to sit in there a while before I check it. I'd say probably 2.5, 3 hours before I even look at it. At that point, I'll open it up, see how the bark bark's coming along. See if it's drying out at all. Probably end up spritzing it with some apple cider vinegar and water. That's the plan for now. This is going to be a long cook, so I'll see you when I check it at around the 3-hour mark. Brisket's been on for 3.5 hours. Let's check it out. This thing is looking really nice. See how it feels. That's starting to render a little bit. We'll get a quick temperature reading. Right in the flat, we're at 155. Checking in the point, about 158. So it's cooking pretty good. Point's taking most of the heat. That's good because the flat should cook a lot slower. Make sure it's nice and tender. Just gonna go ahead, spritz it with some apple cider vinegar and water. Really want to get this side the most. All right, that looks pretty good. So you can see we just have a little pooling here. So I'm just going to go ahead and dump that out. Just keep an eye on that. All right, so we are 5.5 hours in on this brisket, and it is looking really good. Check this thing out. Got some really nice bark building up on here. I think this might be close to getting ready to wrap. Let me check the temperature. We'll check the point first. So we're at about 171 on the point. Let me get a flat measurement. 160, which that's what I like. But from what I'm seeing, the temperatures I'm getting, I think this thing is ready to pull off and wrap. All right, so we just checked on the brisket and it looks really nice. And I've been keeping track. We're at the 5.5 hour mark and we're pulling it off and getting ready to wrap. The bark's looking pretty good. I like where we're at now, especially with those internal temperatures. I really like that the point is hotter than the flat. You really want to try and achieve that because the point has so much fat in it. It needs that hot temperature and time to break down all that fat. But the flat is a lot less fatty, so that needs to cook slower to make sure that it doesn't overcook and dry out. Otherwise, it's not going to be tender. So we're doing a pretty good job here. We got 160-ish around in the flat, and we're at about 170 in the point. So this is perfect. I'm going to go out, grab the brisket, bring it back, and we'll get it wrapped up. All right, so here's the brisket. Check it out. Thing looks great. Super juicy. Got a beautiful color on it. Look at that nice mahogany color we got already. This is going to be a delicious brisket, but let's get it wrapped because it's hot. There we go. I'm gonna lay this thing down. It's jiggly already. All right, now here I have some melted beef tallow. This beef tallow was previously smoked as well. So it's gonna add phenomenal flavor. We want plenty of tallow. I'm gonna go ahead and load this thing up. Oh yeah, we got a lot here. Now, get this thing wrapped before we lose any of this liquid gold. I want to try and keep this thing nice and tight. So we are fat side up right now, and that's exactly where I want it. Just take all this extra paper, just fold it underneath like so, and I'm putting this back on the smoker, fat side up. The internal temperature we're looking for is probably around 200 degrees on this. Around that time when we get to that temperature, you want to check this for tenderness because that's the key to a brisket. Not really about temperature, it's more about tenderness. No brisket is made the same. It could be anywhere from 200 to 210 degrees. You don't know. Just let it go till it's at that tenderness you want. But for now, I got to get this back on the smoker and let it cook. This brisket has been wrapped for 2.5 hours for a total smoke time of 8 hours. And I checked it and it is super tender, both in the point and the flat. So the temperature we got here, we're at 211, 212. This is where I got the tenderness I was looking for. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this off, let it rest for a couple hours. So I took this off the smoker, put it in a cooler for 2.5 hours, pulled it out. Here we are. Let's unwrap this thing, see how it came out, slice into it, and I'm gonna give it a try. Feels super tender. This is gonna be a good brisket. Yeah, this thing looks good. Oh my. All right. Alrighty then. Check it out. Oh, this is going to be a delicious brisket. Look at this thing. Oh my. Let's flip this around. Let's get a nice cross section cut. My God. You ready? And here we go. Wow. Check it out. This is a good brisket. Nice. Thing came out fantastic. Super juicy, obviously. Look at the smoke ring. Absolutely wonderful. This is some good brisket. Let's cut into this flat. See how this came out. Feels super tender, I'll tell you that much. Oh my. Check it out. This is ridiculously juicy for a flat. This is just regular choice. Come on, man. Check it out. This is gonna be so good. Before I slice this up, let me get this cross cut of the point. Just check that out. Just oozing juice. Let's get some slices and give it a try. So I wanna try a slice of the flat and I wanna try a slice of this point. All right, there we go. Oh, yeah. That's pretty tender. All right, so there's our flat. Fantastic. That smoke ring is crazy. You can see it's just falling apart already. This is super tender. Just falls right apart. So I'm giving that a try. Let's look at this point. Delicate. All right, check out the point. Super fatty. This is gonna be good. First, I'm trying a little piece of this flat. Wow, that is good brisket. Super juicy for a piece of flat, man. You can't beat that. That is so good for flat. I don't even know what to expect from this point over here because this flat is crazy. Let me just pull a piece off of this. Check this out. Just crazy, crazy tender. Just pulls right apart. All right, here we go. A nice fatty piece. Wow. Oh my God. So good. Unbelievable. This is some of the best brisket I've ever cooked. You gotta try it this way. Didn't even take that long. Ridiculously tender. So good. I'm not lying to you when I say this is the best brisket I've cooked. And I've cooked an American Wagyu brisket. This came out better. This is just a choice grade brisket. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a like if you did. Subscribe to the channel. Get out there. Smoke something good.